We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank everybody for attending today. Again, this is a multi-part series. This is the third presentation we're doing in the series on Dynamics 365 ERP and oil and gas. Before we talked about digital transformation, how it's impacting oil and gas industry, some best practices, and then we followed that up with recommendations and best practices and getting prepared for ERP implementation, things to consider. And today we'll actually look at the platform a bit and talk about some of the key areas. Sopris is a Microsoft partner that specializes in asset-intensive project-based industries like oil and gas, specifically to the Microsoft platform and cloud technologies. Also have with me today Laura Pfohl, our president, that will be presenting on Dynamics 365. From an agenda perspective, with the time we have, we're going to focus in on really looking at a couple of scenarios, use cases around different order types, the way you can manage different lines of service within the system. And we'll obviously not be covering the entire application, but we will be covering additional parts as we continue with the series. So when you look at really from a Microsoft perspective and kind of what's unique to them in the market, we've talked about this a little bit in the other series, it really is four key pillars, which really when you look at kind of a platform strategy, particular cloud platform strategy, those four key pillars are connected, scalable, intelligent, and integrated. And so when we look at oil and gas field services, very much in today's world, there's more and more demand as it relates to the need to have open architecture to be able to integrate with other systems, our partner, our client systems, and really having this kind of omni-channel ecosystem of integration. In addition, how we're using data, much different than what we did in the past, which was very much report-driven and very much telling us about things that happened in the past. Today, when we look at an intelligent platform like Dynamics 365, really all throughout our work roles and how we're actually interacting, whether it be finance, operations, or in the field, really the system and technology now allows us to have real-time intelligence and predictive intelligence to help us work faster, smarter, and make better decisions and actions. So when you look at the platform, today we're just looking at a very small component of it, which is really under finance and operations. But when you look at the entire Azure platform and what Microsoft has today, some unique elements about it. One of the most unique elements in smart strategies is the fact that you can kind of start where you want to start. So really consuming what you need when you need it, and it's not kind of an all or nothing play. So it allows you to, over time, start to transition into more of a digital type of platform within your organization, and over time replacing potential legacy outdated technologies, and even do things like modernizing some of those technologies you might need to keep through things like Power Apps and the Power Platform, as you see down at the bottom. So when we look at that entire stack, some key elements about the application is really the intelligence. What we talked about, intelligence is not just analytics, but it really is truly predictive and artificial intelligence, and really looking at what can we learn from the data to really take action and take proper action and response as it relates to the operation side. As we look to the interoperability across ecosystems, a very unique element to the platform, which is common data model. So this really has a common data service that allows you to design integrations with logic between systems, not just within Dynamics, but also external systems to create a standard operating environment. So from a workload perspective, as I mentioned, we're not going to be able to hit all this today, and we've got a webinar coming up on really the field ticketing process, which will cover some of this upper element as it relates to more traditional selling elements, but full capability as it relates to empowering our sellers with traditional CRM type of function, but also integrating more of an operational element, which is what makes it unique for services-based companies. So the ability to sell both products and services in a kind of a mixed mode and different types of services, whether it be fixed fee, project-based, and so on. As we look at really looking at collaboration with our partners as well as with our vendors, if we're using contractors, things like that, having the ability to have vendor portals where we can do collaboration. They can submit invoices, we can interact with their customer profile record, skills, insurance, things like that, as well as the whole change management cycle and interaction that we have together within that partnership. Then when we look at kind of people and equipment, so having the ability to really what we call manage resources. So resources can be employees, they can be contractors, they can be equipment, and can be material. What's unique about that is that we can not only look at a particular order or piece of work having all those elements to it, but also when we look at a schedule and really optimizing utilization of all those different resource types, having the ability to do that in a single system is fairly unique. And then having the integrated field operations, so allowing for the offline mode when we're not connected to be able to perform field ticketing type processes, but then when we do get reconnected efficiently and quickly being able to reconcile from a billing perspective, and so we can improve our DSOs. From a project perspective, full project lifecycle management, whether those are build projects, capital projects, and so on. And we'll look at a little bit about that today. And then finally, full financials, integrated financials across GL, AP, AR, and fixed assets. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Laura, who is going to present the D365 solution today.
Thank you, Matt. Perfect. Okay, everybody should see my main screen. I'd like to first start by giving you a little bit of an introduction to D365. So D365, as you can see, is a completely web-enabled application. So when you first log into the application itself, you will see that you will be coming to a dashboard. That dashboard is specifically based on user. So a user can be configured to come to a particular dashboard when they log in, and the contents of their dashboard can very much be configured and decided on upon each user individually. So based on where they log in, they'd still see that same dashboard. There are different elements and components of the dashboard, as you can see here. We can actually manage these individual tiles, what we refer to as tiles within the dashboard, to either view or see those tiles. That's very simply done by right mouse clicking on that tile, going to personalize, and we can very quickly say that we want to hide that tile and therefore not be able to see that tile. That is a change that has been made for me as a user, and only I would see that change where that particular tile is not being displayed on the dashboard when we log in. You will also see some elements and components on the left here. I've chosen, very much similar to the way that we go into web browsers and personalize our web spaces in the system, I've chosen to basically include a calendar in my default web page that I come to, as well as it identifies to me my work items assigned to me. Work items assigned to me could be populated in several different ways. The first way could certainly be by workflow. So if in fact we've established workflow, which in this case, for example, we've actually gone in and established workflow where we've got some invoice proposals for sending out invoices to customers that are on my plate based on workflow that need to be reviewed by me. The difference between workflow in the system and what we call alerts is workflow is something where the next step cannot progress until the prior step has been completed. So this is a workflow that I've set up in the system, and notice it's alerting me to let me know that I have a step in that particular workflow process. The other type of information that could be contained on the work items assigned to me section of the system could be alerts. So if in fact a pricing has been established or a customer quotation or order has been set up in the system that's not within the correct margins that we require that they be in that threshold, either an alert can come to me letting me know that this has taken place, meaning it has not held up the process. We are continuing to process our quote and order to our customer, but we have not held up the process in doing so. So that is what we call an alert, and that just lets me know that this took place in the system and allows me to go in and review what took place in the system and establish any follow-up actions that need to take place because of that particular workflow in the system. So work items assigned to me is what I've chosen. The other part that you'll see on the system here is our navigation pane, and I've just selected that little thumbtack that you see at the top of the script pane, which has allowed me to kind of paste or tack my particular screen so that it's visible at all times. And you'll see on the navigation side of the screen, we have a couple different areas here. The first one being our favorites. Favorites is where we use quite a bit of our ability to personalize our menus to meet our requirements. So you'll notice that I've got all kinds of things here on my favorites, which are areas of the system that I visit most often. And rather than having to go to my navigation pane every time, I put it on my favorites so that it's easy to get to. I can add anything that I want onto this navigation pane by simply going to the menu, and you'll notice that as I hover over the individual options that you see here, this star is illuminated, and if I click that star, it adds that to my favorites. So you'll notice that I've now added customers to my favorites part of the navigation bar that you see here. The other part of the system is our recent part. So this is, in essence, breadcrumbs, and it tracks the work that I've recently done within the application itself and where I may have navigated within the application than I have been previously. The other component is what I call workspaces here. So you'll notice that in our workspaces are a little bit more unique. I'm going to click on the project management one, which is the one that I have pinned to my favorites as well. Our workspace is a little bit more of a graphical representation of a dashboard. It contains easy access tiles to go to various parts of the system based on the type of workspace that it is. And more importantly, this is where we start to see our Power BI. Obviously, being a Microsoft product, we do have Power BI completely embedded in our application to handle our analytics. And you'll see that our workspaces is a great place to see some of those analytics coming out. So this has taken a minute to kind of draw these analytics, but you'll see that what it's doing is it's giving me some graphical representation and analytical reports of the different aspects of the system throughout the application. And when I hover over these are interactive analytics that you see here, so that when I actually go into these and I select a particular bar, I can in fact drill down on the data that comprises this analytics. And we have little cues here where we show information like statistical information like the number of projects that were created, estimated projects, and projects that are in process. And then we see some analytics like actual revenue by customers, our budget gross margin by project. All of this is established in the system itself under our analytics. And this is a great example of where we take advantage of utilizing the Power BI tools that are built within the application and embed them right here in the application. You will see on the bottom of the screen that in this analytics section of the workspace, besides having one page, we actually can have multiple pages. So if we click on our cost tab, you'll see more analytics specifically associated with cost, actual versus budget within the system itself that is being generated from our project management system itself. So this is a great place to actually have this information readily available and at our fingertips to be able to show this information. The last part of our navigation bar that you see here is our actual modules. You will see that we are a very robust product, very integrated, and we address many of the aspects of most businesses, everything from the GL all the way through to projects, to payroll, to HR. We can accommodate all of those requirements within the system itself, and we're going to touch on some of those as part of our webinar that we're having today. But this would actually get us into the individual, very detailed components of the system. So, for example, if I click on project management, you'll see that I get into the very detailed capabilities and functionalities within the project management system itself. So that gives you an idea of how the layout takes place within the system and allows us to very quickly and easily go in and look at information that's contained within the application via our navigation bar and or the individual components of the system. Some of the other features, functionalities that you'll see within the application is our ability to basically integrate into Microsoft Office. We are, once again, Microsoft products, so therefore you're going to see a lot of tight integration to the Microsoft products themselves. At any point in time, I can go into a screen here. For example, this is a screen of our project. And I could basically say, I can go up to this little Open in Microsoft Office button that you see here, and I can do two things. I can very simply export my projects to Microsoft Excel. And what you'll see is that will just basically give me the option of opening up that file and very quickly dropping that list of values from the projects table into an Excel file, so that if I wanted to do some simple reporting or information contained within that Excel project file, I can do that very quickly and easily, and you see how that just popped that right open into Excel and opened that up for me in the system itself. The other aspect about that capability is the ability to do what we call open in Excel. The difference between this and the other one is this actually creates a live link to the D365 database in the system itself, so that the data is actually real-time updated and it is a live connection into the database. So if I go through these steps to enable these in the system, you'll notice that it's opening up the Microsoft Dynamics Office connector. That connector is now connecting into my D365 instance and being able to give me real-time data associated with that table that I'm viewing. It sets up default fields for my report itself or the information I'm looking for, and you'll see this is the same information we looked at before, but the difference here is now I have the ability to go in and design. So if there is a field contained within the project table that is not contained on my default view of that, I can go right in here into edit, and then you'll notice that it's showing me and displaying all of the available fields that can be put into this system itself. So for example, on this particular report, if I want to see the customer account, I would basically go in and say, show me the customer account, show me the date it was created in the system, go ahead and update. It says, do you want to update this, refresh this data? And I'm going to say yes. And then when I go in and hit refresh, what it's doing is it's taking that data, inserted those new fields that I requested here in the system, customer account and data creation, and it populated that with the information directly out of the database. This is, in fact, now, as I mentioned, a live connection into D365, which also means this becomes a data input tool for you. New records can be set up in the system, and or managing or changing data can be done very quickly right here in the system itself. And then after you've made the necessary change, you select the publish, and it will insert the new record and or change the record that you've modified in the system.
Hey, Laura, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure. Sure.
Christopher has a question for you just pertains to this. He wants to know if the connector in Excel being displayed, is it an add-on to Excel or is it native in Excel?
So it will be when you install Microsoft Dynamics 365, you will have a tool that gets installed that is a connector into it. It is really very similar to the ODBC connectors that we've seen in the past that goes in and reaches into the database. So when you install D365, it will install that connector for you and make it available to Excel.
Fantastic.
So once this two-way connection, the big key to this two-way connection that you see here is we're not bypassing any of the validation in the system. So if we tried to either modify data or insert new data into the system itself and we publish this to the database, we haven't bypassed validation. If what we've modified in the system or the new record we are creating does not pass validation for those applicable fields, it will actually validate it right on the fly and not allow you to publish incorrect data and invalid data. So we will see that very quickly when we're using this tool to actually publish data back. So this mimics the same thing as if someone had actually entered the data directly into the system itself. So we don't bypass that when we're using our Excel tool within the application itself. The other aspect that you'll see throughout the system itself is also the ability to attach documents and really what we would consider our document handling part of the system itself. So if I were to go in, for example, and look at some of our sales orders that I see in the system itself, you will see that I do have a sales order in here for Chevron. What I've done here in Chevron, when I've opened up the Chevron order itself, I've actually attached in the daily work ticket that is associated with the billing. So when I go in here, I can go to that little attachment button that you see here. That little paperclip attachment button will be everywhere in the system throughout all of the system and all of the tables. I could then either attach a new file, a new image, a note, or I can simply reference a URL. URL might be very helpful when it is regarding a external website where we can access, for example, product information, product pictures, manuals, technician manuals, whatever that might be that are needed and accessible. So if I go here and I say I want to attach a file, what it does is it allows me to browse. I could then go to my part of the system. I could choose that I want to attach that daily work ticket that I've identified here. And you'll notice that besides attaching the ticket, it does provide me a preview of that ticket right within the document handling part of the system itself. And if I were to open that up, as long as I have access to the program it's in, which happens to be PDF, it will show me that daily work ticket. So I've now attached this right within the ERP D365 system itself. Not only have I attached it, but I also can decide whether I allow internal or external restriction. Internal would mean that only us internally working in the D365 system could see it. External would mean that possibly when you're producing documents like an invoice to the customer, it would also include this document in the package that gets sent as an invoice to the customer. So you can control how that access is done, and you can have unlimited number of these in the system itself. This part of our system also becomes our note-taking part of our system. So here's where we can have unlimited notes set up in the system, attach a note, and basically type as much as we want. Once again, having that same restriction on whether there's an internal or an external availability to be able to see that note, and that saves it. So everywhere in the system, we can now have these notes. So our customer table, our project table, our work order table, wherever that might be, you can have those notes in the system itself. What I'd like to next show you is a little bit of our preview of information that can be captured related to a product. So what I've set up for today is the ability to look at, I've set up a couple of items and I've prefixed them with OG. Our item number can be alphanumeric, dashes, slashes, whatever that might be. I've set up two different parts of the system itself. Notice that one of the items is a service, and that is the fuel tank weekly rental is a service. The other item is an actual product itself. So an actual product itself, obviously we may buy the product, we may sell the product, we may warehouse the product, however that might be in the system itself. When I've set up that, for example, field tank weekly rental or our HCl acid, I then can go and set up specific pricing. On every part of the system itself, in the master file for the product itself, we establish a base sales price for that. And in this case, we've set up a base sale price of $25. But we always set up and usually pretty much have pricing specific to our individual customers. So here under our sales tab here that you see in the system, what we call trade agreements. And trade agreements can be established in many different ways and allow us to control pricing. This first record that you see here means that we have specifically set up pricing per the table for a particular customer, and this customer happens to be customer 1554. And customer 1554 has special pricing of $23 per unit for that weekly rental. And it basically is based on a quantity of one to a quantity of any quantity above one as well. The second one that you see here is where we've set a group of customers. So in this case, we have a group of customers. The customer is called the major accounts group that you see here. And in our major accounts group, if they buy 1 through 10 of these, it's $25. But if they buy 11 through 52, obviously this is a weekly rental, so it would be up to 52 weeks, it gets discounted down to $20. Besides being able to establish fixed pricing here, you will see down at the bottom here that we have multi-level discounting also available. So we can get extremely creative, very robust functionality of being able to set up and establish pricing within the system itself for a particular item based on many different factors. It could be a group of items, a group of customers, an individual customer, an individual product, lots of different options, and it's flat fee. It could be discounts off of the established MSRP already in the system. If we wanted to establish a formal pricing agreement with a customer, we would basically use the function of our system that we call sales agreements. In sales agreements, you'll see that I've got one in here for Chevron, and in the Chevron sales agreement, I've gone through and I've actually established an actual sales agreement. What I've said here is that Chevron's going to do 52 weeks of rental of the field tanks rental in the system. I've identified which site and warehouse we're going to service that, or it could be location, representative of location. And I've established an actual unit price of $18, and it expires on 31/2019. And as noted, they basically say that they're going to do 52 weeks of this. I've also gone in and I've established that we're going to basically also provide them the acid association, an HCl acid, and we're going to do it by gallon. They're going to purchase 40 gallons of it. We're giving it to them at a unit price of $55. And once again, that expires on 12/31. So you can continue to modify, edit the sales agreement as necessary as you add new additional lines to this sales agreement in the system. And this is specific to Chevron. You could also produce this particular sales agreement in writing to the customer. This is just simply an example of what the sales agreement would look like if you were to produce it out of the system. Most all of our clients choose to modify the sales agreement, and or more importantly, you can integrate this into Microsoft Word and have this display however you want for the agreement that you've made and provide that to the customer. What the sales agreement is going to now allow you to do is to very quickly be able to go in and now create what we call release orders from that sales agreement. So if in fact Chevron called you up and said, okay, I'm ready to ship 5 gallons of HCl acid to a particular field, you would be able to go in and create a release order for just the 5 gallons of HCl acid and have it shipped to. And it would basically identify that as being part of this agreement that you've made and show that out of the 40, you only have 35 left on the commitment, but that you've shipped already 4 based on this commitment in the system itself. So very simple. So you can keep this as being synonymous with a blanket order, but also it's a sales agreement between you and your customer on product that's going to be shipped to their location. The other option that you have is utilizing our pure project management part of our system itself. So what I've done is if you go into the projects, we have the ability to manage many different types of projects. Our investment projects are in essence our capital projects. So if in fact we have a capital project, we're building a new field or we're supporting the building of a new field, we can actually set those up with full work breakdown structures of the tasks that need to be completed. For the purposes of today, what I've done is I've defined an oiled field project in the system itself. Sorry, let's go ahead and click into that. And I think I clicked into the wrong one. So let's escape out of that and go back into the 336, which is our oil and gas field project in the system. And I have set up a really very simple work breakdown structure for this particular project where I've gone and I've identified that we're providing acid tanks, trucking services, and water heating in the system itself. In the section related to acid tanks, if I go into the details here, what I've included in the details here is an actual item. Let me just minimize that. Is an actual item of the actual acid we're providing and the quantity that we're providing and the price that's being provided for that. I've also established, let me just put this in here at $60. I'm going to just edit this real quick so you'll see what this looks like. So this is our published, and this publishes a snapshot version of that particular budget that we've set up in the system. But I noticed here we didn't have a sale price in here. So for this purposes, I'm just going to put this at 60. So you'll see what I'm going to show you in a minute. So we've got an actual item transaction in here of selling item. And then we actually have a labor transaction in here related to this particular item. And we've identified that labor is just 1 hour of service in the system. And it's established the price, our cost, and our price for that labor. Yes, that labor cost could be assumed to be the payroll or the salary associated with that individual, but you also have the ability to set up things like indirect costs to be able to factor in things like fringe benefits and stuff like that. So I've set this very rudimentary project plan up here in the system. And if I now change from instead of a scheduling view and look at what we call our cost estimates, what you're going to see here is this is breaking out for us and showing us basically our total cost in the system itself. So we can see that very specifically to see what our costs are in the system itself. So we'll see that, and you'll notice it actually broke out here under that asset tank, both the item and the labor associated with that. And we have some labor that we've set up under the water heating as well. And you'll see that we've got $3,000 in labor set up here in the system as well. So this allows us to very quickly and easily be able to prepare estimates in the system, identify those estimates. Our tracking views of our work breakdown structure allow us to track, what we've actually done on the project. So if in fact we've delivered some of this product, if we've delivered some of this service, we can identify that to be able to see the transactions associated with that and any details associated. So we see basically our actual cost would be if we've actually bought those asset tanks and shipped them, and we'd see that in the system, what our plan and what our variance is in the application itself. So this allows us to see things of product and what our total overall cost tracking is. And then we also have the ability to choose what we call effort tracking. And our effort tracking would be, of course, related to labor. So you'll remember that we had labor associated with the water heating component of this. So this would actually track based on timesheets that have been entered in the system or other means by which we can bring that or import that data in the system. We have the ability to track the actual progress that has taken place on the actual labor and services that pertain to this particular aspect of the system itself. So nice 360-degree view of everything taking place within the system. And you may have seen when I was filtered over here and had my related information here, you will see that we have the ability to see on the fly actual progress that has taken place for these transactions in the system. I'll go ahead and click on one of these other ones up here and you'll see some more information. But we've got our forecast identified in here. We've got our actual costs set up here in the system, and you can kind of see that information is populated into these very quick, easy, fast tabs that you see here. The other way that we can look at this is under our control tab. We have ability to look at project statements, and our project statements would show us, in essence, kind of that true P&L view of revenue versus cost established on each of these individual projects. Our project system does go further to the capability of being able to do full resource management, tracking, et cetera, in the system, and we will probably be reviewing that at a later date. If we, in fact, wanted to process our sales orders now, right from this project, we have the ability to do that right under here, under Manage Item Task, and we have the ability to create a sales order. So our sales order lets us, in this case, create a sales order linked to a particular project. So when we link that particular project, notice it came up with the Chevron customer in here as being what we've set up. We have the ability to basically now take a sales order, link it to that project itself. This may be simply an order for additional product that was not set up in the system in the first place. And when we go in and set this up, we can go in and set the sales order up. But more importantly, it's now costed, and the revenue associated with this sales order and potentially the cost of buying this product for this particular project are now going to be all registered in the project subledger, so that when you do a true P&L or an analysis of your revenue versus your cost for this project, that is now automatically captured in the system. There is an actual true project subledger that allows you to be able to capture all that to the degree of being able to see that by the project. So let me just go ahead and complete this line so that we have this information in here. But you'll see that this allows us to go in and very distinctly be able to set up an actual sales order by the actual project in the system itself. Within our sales orders part of the system that you see here, we have quite a bit of functionality available within the system. We have the ability to do full pick, pack, and ship capability, generating picking list registration, and being able to actually do a full posting of the packing slip and then an invoice. We do have the ability to produce what we call a pro forma packing slip. So if you do have a client that needs to have something in advance before it's actually shipped, documents that may be necessary for international compliance or customs or duties, you will be able to produce that in the system itself. The invoice to the customer in this case is produced directly out of the sales order. So the sales order takes many different statuses. You'll notice this is an open order here. It starts as an open order. It can actually start as a quote to the customer. Once the customer accepts it, it can be turned into an order. That order could then be shipped, in which case it would basically show as being shipped here in our status. And then the invoice is produced directly out of the sales order system. So everything is very nicely tied together in the application to be able to make sure that there's no errors and mistakes because we're working with different parts of the system. The other thing that we have the ability to do within our sales order part of the system itself is actually link this to a purchase order in the system itself. So if we wanted to, notice it says new purchase order. We have the ability to do, in essence, kind of a drop ship type situation where we may be buying this exact product from another vendor, drop shipping that to the client directly, and now we have linked the purchase order has been linked to the sales order so that as we drop ship to the actual customer, it is automatically updated in the sales order as being drop shipped and therefore being able to process for invoicing purposes. If all of this, if you're not going to actually have, and by the way, items can be set up as either items themselves, or we do have the ability to have what we would consider to be non-stocked items, in which case we would use a category. So in essence, a sales category. Sales category would bypass the need to actually have an actual item set up in the system, whether it be a service item or a material item, set up in the system, but allow you to fully process it through a sales order part of your system without having that item set up in the application itself. That also allows you to do procurement based on the category in the system itself instead of having the item set up. So all of this kind of talks about how to do that. If everything else is not sufficient and you don't want to have any of that, those steps to make those formalities, we also have what we call free text invoicing. Free text invoicing allows us to go in and actually invoice and prepare an invoice, but it's much more just that, free text. So when we prepare this invoice itself, instead of going in and picking a particular item or service that we're selling, instead when we go down to the lines here, we have the ability to type in whatever description we want, choose the revenue account that it's hitting, and then choose the dollar amount and produce the invoice itself. We also can do recurring invoices. So if you have a client that's paying for monthly maintenance services and it's a flat rate monthly, you could either use a recurring free text invoice to do that, or you can, from project, set up a recurring transaction that gets billed to the customer on a recurring basis in a flat fee amount within the system itself. So I'm going to pause there while we have a little bit of time left and see if there's any more questions that have either come up while I've been presenting, or if there's any other specific questions right at the moment that we can see if we can address now or in the future.
If you have questions right now, go ahead and type them into the question panel. Laura, I think you handled one of the questions. We answered a couple of the questions over the chat. So right now, we don't have any questions waiting. If you want to cover anything else while they're taking time to type, feel free.
Well, Laura, I would just highlight the full procurement system, vendor management, as well as service management for maintenance.
Yep. So we full procurement system itself in the application. It does allow us to go through full purchase orders in the application itself, either by procurement category and or by the actual items that are set up in the system. But some of the additional unique features you'll see here in the application is we do fully support requests for quotes. Requests for quotes allow us to then post those requests for quotes either out on an electronic means to a vendor itself, and the vendors are able to use a vendor collaboration, and that vendor collaboration allows them to go right into the website, indicate their bid, in essence, for that request for quote that you've submitted out there. If they, in fact, are not using the portal to do that, they certainly can just simply email that into you. Those requests for quotes are evaluated, and when it's determined for which request for quote will be actually processed into a PR, purchase request or PO, you'll notice that those requests for quotations have follow-up steps to be able to allow you to be able to go in and support that in the system itself. If we click right over here to our vendor collaboration portal, you'll see that we have the ability to actually do purchase order confirmations, vendor bidding in the system itself. So if we look at vendor bidding, it lets us go in and say any new bid invitations that we've set out there are requests for quotes, returned bids, bids in process, or submitted bids into the system itself. Right now, this is showing all this information for a particular vendor. So let's go ahead and remove that and see if we see any more that have been put out here. But we will see all that information stored within our bidding system itself. Any additional questions or areas that you feel that we need to take a look at?
I think I would just finish on service management, and then we need to wrap up.
All right, yeah. Our service management system is really kind of our liaison or our introductory part of our system itself that is associated with field services. So if in fact you're using D365 field service mobile application in the system and or another type of field service system, really the service management part of our system becomes that liaison. It takes the information contained within those field service applications. It brings it into our service order system itself. Our service order system allows us to capture the labor, the equipment, the materials that were all used on a particular work order ticket. And then that work order ticket is then passed over to the project system for billing. The other things that it does let us also track are if we are maintaining certain assets and we need to track the work associated with an asset, that asset in our system is considered a service object. That's an object we're maintaining. We're able to track that as well in the system on the work and the effort put into that actual service object itself in the application. If in fact you don't have a field service and you simply want to have the tickets logged directly into the system, you absolutely can go in and just utilize our full service order and service management system to allow you to be able to go in and enter those tickets into the system. Another component that is applicable in our service order system is what we call service agreements. Service agreements would be where, here's a good example, you're doing maintenance or you're doing testing or you're doing some sort of recurring work that's taking place at a site. We would go in and basically create a new service agreement in the system. It allows you to choose the project that it's associated with. So let's just say we're doing some actual service in the system, so a management agreement of some sort, and we would have a service agreement group. And you can label it silver, gold, bronze in the system. That simply establishes, of course, our service level agreement, so our SLA, so how promptly we respond to them in the system. And the other part of the service agreement then lets us go in. This is a great way to do either planned maintenance or management and be able to go in and basically say that we're performing certain services and identify that in the system itself. We also can determine the service interval, whether the interval is every 10 days, 5 days, monthly, yearly in the application.
All right. Hey, Laura, Matt, fantastic job. Laura, especially you. I've never seen anybody get that thorough of a demonstration in 30 minutes in my life. It's fantastic. We'd like to thank everyone out there. We do have to go ahead and close down the webinar for today, but if you have additional questions, type them in the chat and we'll get an answer directly back to you. We have your information. So if you also, there are more events in this series. We're going to go very closely into field ticketing and the field service side. We're going to talk about Power BI and reporting. So feel free to go to soprissystems.com/ONG and you'll be able to sign up for other events. Other than that, this concludes the webcast for today, and thank you all very much.